going to hear from Mary Woollen, and we're going to see Mary in two different forms. She recorded a presentation for us that we're going to play because she wasn't sure which continent she was going to be on, but she's joining our panel and our discussion later on. Mary is the Director of Stakeholder Engagement at Ultrasafe Nuclear Corporation, as well as Stakeholder Engagement Specialist with Deep Isolation. She recently was a member of the North Wind team, which conducted public engagement for a plan to manage waste at SONGS, the San Onofre nuclear generating station that we heard about yesterday. Earlier in her career, she was with the Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future as government and community liaison. She was also a consultant to a number of organizations, Lawrence Livermore on the Laser Inertial Fusion Energy Program. She was a policy advisor on external engagement to the chairman of the NRC, who happens to be in this room. And she was a consultant to DOE for several years in an effort to conduct a consent-based siting approach for nuclear waste. And she began her work in this arena 2 decades ago as the executive director of an environmental NGO. She has a BA in sociology anthropology from Denison University and a master of social work from the University of Utah, which is well represented today on this panel. Rebecca, can we please play Mary's video? There we go.
Thank you for sticking around for the last presentation of the last day. I'm going to start with an anecdote. 10 years ago, I worked for the Blue Ribbon Commission, and we conducted, among other things, conducted public meetings around the country and around the world, trying to learn from other people or lessons learned for what to do right to site a nuclear waste repository. So one of those meetings took place in Sweden in a town called Oskarshamn, and there was a small meeting that we helped to convene. It was actually a working meeting on their behalf. We were sort of voyeurs, observers of this meeting, but we were able to ask some questions. And the Nuclear Waste Management Organization was there, the mayor of the town that was hosting the repository, as well as some adjacent town mayors. I think someone from the regulatory space was there, Parliament, and 2 environmental groups. It was a really interesting meeting. I remember less about the content, what was spoken about, more about the way people conducted themselves and the way business was done. They actually covered some tough subjects, but they did it well. Things moved along. It ended with kind of next steps, and people talked about asking how your brother is. Afterwards, it was nice. Afterwards, I pulled aside the guy who ran one of the environmental NGOs, and I said to him, wow, that was really impressive. How did you get a seat at the table? And so he looked at me and he said, well, you know what? In the US, you get the stakeholders you deserve. So I thought about that. Actually, I've thought about that a lot since then. It's sort of been one of my little touchstones for this work. How to make things better. I think we all know that this is it's a tough area of nuclear, whether it's nuclear waste siting, nuclear reactors, it is anything nuclear. It's very polarized. So, you know, and I'm not opining on the particulars of it, but I just, you know, after 20 years of doing this work, what I see is one side, sort of the nuclear industry side, there's a lot of blame and what feels like sort of talking down to the public and stakeholders who are, you know, in opposition, who are trying to get a message across or try to understand something better. And then from those who are opposed in the public space or NGO, there's a lot of, you know, minds aren't as open as one would hope that they would be. There seems to be a real ideological divide along, are you pro-nuclear or anti? And there's not a lot of space for information to be shared in between. So that's really too bad, because we have to do better. And, you know, we can. And I think if we change some of the processes by which we do this work, there's a way to do so. So, you know, what I saw in this, that little room in Sweden was, you know, a way that people convene to solve a problem. And obviously I didn't see, or I don't know everything that preceded that, but one can only suppose that they've done some things kind of on the front end, you know, a little differently than we have. So I harken back to my days and when I was in graduate school for social work, and one of the little maxims, little teachings that I remember was that if you can't change someone's behavior or situation, change your own behavior first. And so I think about that, and I think about, okay, in order for that to happen, what needs to happen system-wise so that we can affect behavior, so that we can affect down the road. And so instead of always pointing the finger at someone else, what can we do better? And so there was a model that we used. It was called antecedent behavior consequence, and for want of a better term, ABC. That's kind of cute, but nonetheless, it's a model that I want to share with you and further illustrate my thinking. So if I can do that. So this is, in essence, this is how simple the model is, this to show this causality. And basically, it's the antecedent, and this is adapted for the situation, the antecedent, all that precedes an engagement, behavior, how people conduct themselves in an interaction. Consequence, what happens as a result? It's the you get what you deserve, or you get what you earn. So what I saw in Sweden was only the B, but it got high ratings. It seemed very functional, and consequence, look at Sweden today. They're ahead of most. They're probably going to be one of the first to actually operate a nuclear waste repository. I know we can't just take examples from other countries and just lay them down here and think they're going to work. There's a lot of differences in, governments, the size of the country, how decisions are made. But still, I think we all know too that places like Sweden, Finland, Canada, others, but we're studying them too for the ways they're doing some of this front end work, some of this antecedent work a little better. So I want to also walk through this model, and because here in the U.S. Doing this work, typically it's very predictable the outcome we're going to get by the way we're setting up these first two. And so I'm going to march through this just with my little fake company called Acme Nuclear, and this is sort of meant to typify these types of this sequence, and it can be adapted to government organizations across the board. But typically what you have is you have a company or government, and you have a problem to solve, and you need to come up with a solution. So the case we all know well, a nuclear waste repository for spent nuclear fuel, or maybe electricity for a nuclear reactor. But there's a problem, and a team of engineers set out to solve the problem. They work at it hard. They solve it in primarily a technical and linear fashion. Internal resources go almost solely to this, and they work on it in the way they know to get the job done. And this is understandable. They go through a bunch of iterations to solve the problem over a set of years, typically. And when they believe they've achieved the safety and economics from their perspective, and achieve what they term as success, they trot out the solution, put a bow on it, and it's ready to be delivered to the public. They're not bad actors. It's not a malevolent design, but it's siloed, and it's insular, and that has consequences. So by the time the public hears or reads about it, the project is typically well on its way, and a schedule's been established to get there. Information can be difficult, if not impossible, to access, and the information that typically is available is hard to understand. The content is technically challenging. There are all kinds of charts and graphs and language of a lexicon that I give like a geek scale, on a geek scale, about a 9. Whoops, what am I doing? My little graphic. So in these meetings then, so you have a typical that you have a public meeting. So we all know the crucible of the public meeting. And this is often the first time people have been able to discuss this, in one place at one time. And so typically what you have here is you have an engineer or set of engineers who take the dais, and they proceed to give these PowerPoint presentations that are hard to understand and apply practically, and frankly just aren't aligned with or address the concerns of people who are in the room. They're explaining feedback loops and chemistry and all kinds of other very technical types of information, but it's not really speaking to what are the concerns of the people who are in the audience, which is typically, is this safe? What's going to happen if there's an accident? And what's up on the screen is not really meeting the audience with where they are. And there's no real interaction between them all. Now it's a vexing problem with no easy solutions in terms of translating technical information into publicly understandable documents information. It's not, public isn't dumb. I'm not dumb, but I have a difficult time with this information. And so, but somehow we need to do better. We can do better here. And this is a place that I think, going forward, we're going to have to really put a lot of focus on. And there's the other thing that's kind of a setup in this situation is the people haven't met before. So there's no trust, there's no relationships. You're just supposed to believe this person up there because they're talking in technical terms, and you're just, why should you believe them? So I have a relate, and even when you do know them, it's hard, but it's a different situation when there is trust built. And I had something just happened a couple of weeks ago with an engineer that I worked with, who was whom I trust. I've worked with for enough time that I understand what I understand, and he's a very trustworthy person to me. I was asking him, how do I explain to other people that this reactor is safe? I have my own understanding of it, and comfortable with the safety margins and the workings of this reactor. But what do I say to people when they say, is it safe? And he said, well, it's 10 to the minus 7 safe. And I just thought that was funny because I don't even know what that means. And of course, I'm communicating here. So 10 to the minus safe is 0.0001, which is 0.001 chance that an accident occurring. Basically, that means it's really safe. I thought, well, does this mean is that the same odds as winning the lottery or getting struck by lightning? I have no context. So anyway, help wanted there. So stop. Okay, so we've established that these are hard conversations, but they're not impossible. And there's ways you can adapt the process to make it easier. So in essence, we want to get to where the conversations are going like this and create more alignment. So when you have these very unsatisfactory types of interactions, meetings like this, encounters to get to where you need to get for the project to be successful or not, by the time you get there, it's really resolved in any consensual way. Sometimes the project can go ahead, but there's not a lot of goodwill, and it's arguable whether long-term success is realized, at all. Other net consequences of these type of acrimonious interactions are that project is delayed or canceled, or there's lawsuits, or there's a lot of money thrown at public relations in order to try to fix the problem. So anyway, so we are in search of a better way. I believe there is one, and I've had the pleasure to work in some situations where I was able to be trusted to create a plan, get the resources and execute it and have the support of the upper management to do so. So I've seen it work, it can. So here are just some general things that I think that if followed, can get us to a better result. I'm going to share my screen here. Maybe. Okay, so I'm just calling these, best practices of the antecedent. Generally, these include integrated planning, transparency, information inclusion. Those are kind of the key principles involved in this element. So basically, at the beginning, sell the organization on the value of engagement early. Do this in the boardroom or wherever these decisions are made. So the CEO, the chairman, the president, whomever the upper management is, and get them to buy into the value of this engagement early on. Write a charter if you need to. In fact, I would encourage you to, because once you make a plan like this, chances are it's going to be challenged, and you want to be able to wave it out there and remind everyone this is something you've all agreed to. Incorporate engagement specialists into a team early on, so it's not just engineers, and it represents a broader spectrum of skills. Communications, social science, there's a lot of different skill sets that can work into this team. And then you want to be real about the expectations of this. You're never going to convince everyone. You're not going to make a case that is believable or acceptable to everyone. You're going to do your best work. You're going to be honest, transparent, as open as possible. And those that don't come along, it's okay. You will have learned from them. They will have had a chance to participate, and that's the best you can do. Then you need to secure the needed resources, and this is important because you can't just say, yes, go forth and do this work. You need to have the resources. You may have to make public meetings. You may have to pay for travel for other people. Make sure you have those locked in, along with an internal champion who has your back during all of this, because it will get tricky. People will feel worn down and discouraged, and you've got to have someone that believes in what you're doing. Then plan the stakeholder engagement strategy. You want to make it as comprehensive and dynamic as possible, traceable, accountable. Identify the stakeholders as early as possible and be inclusive. Don't filter out the ones who are the loudest detractors. That never works, and it's a common fault of a lot of management decisions. And build a plan to engage them, brings them in early and gives them real access. And really, above all, do what it is you're going to say you're going to do. You're trying to build trust, and the only way you can do that is incrementally, over time. Again, resist the impulse to circle the wagons when things get tough. Stick to it. Okay, so now we're going to get to the behaviors you want through all this civil, curious collaboration. You want to engage stakeholders meaningfully as possible. People can tell when it's hollow work or it's really not going to be additive or considered. So create meaningful work, and there's a lot of ways to do that. Create the type of interactions that maximize opportunity to build relationships, conversations, trust. Don't just do big public meetings. Do more intimate conversations, roundtables. A lot of ways to do that. There's a lot written on that. Include the leadership in discussion. Make sure your leadership is at the table. Get the CEO to sit in and listen. That's really going to sell them on the effects of this work. And create a work plan that really does include the stakeholders. Give them work assignments, circle back, iterate. The communication needs to be two-way. This business of one-way communication where people sit patiently and listen and then maybe make a comment that's not answered doesn't work. Use plain English whenever, as best possible. Don't use acronyms. Provide channels for feedback and evaluation. Make meeting summary. Make sure people will sign off on the meeting summary so nothing is missed. And basically, listen deeply. If you do all these things, it doesn't assure success, but it makes a difference in the goodwill of the people that you're working with. And I think it really does lead to outcomes that are different And like I said, I've seen it. The consequence, you do these things, you get what you deserve. You get what you earn. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Mary, and I'm sure we'll have many, many questions for you as well, given your vast experience in this field.